There's a moment you probably know too well when you look around and realize that everyone is talking, but no one is really saying anything. When laughter fills the room, but somehow it feels like background noise in a world that has forgotten silence. You sit there listening, and something inside you begins to ache because you see what others don't. You see the cracks beneath the smiles, the contradictions hiding behind certainty. You see how people cling to illusions as if the truth itself would burn them. And in that instant, you feel it again, that quiet isolation that comes from seeing too much. You try to speak, to share what's stirring inside you, a thought, a reflection, a glimpse of something deeper. But as soon as you do, you feel the distance grow. People look away. They laugh nervously. They change the subject. And you begin to wonder, maybe it's better if I stay silent. But silence for the one who sees is never peace. It's suffocation. Philosophers like Arthur Schopenhauer understood this torment well. He believed that the more one perceives the truth of life, the more unbearable it becomes to live among those who don't. Because once you pierce the veil of illusion, you cannot return to ignorance. You cannot pretend anymore. You begin to notice how most conversations are just rituals, how opinions are recycled, how certainty is a mask. For fear, people don't want to think. They want to belong. Society rewards conformity, not clarity. It praises confidence, not wisdom. And it is built in such a way that anyone who thinks too deeply becomes a threat to its balance. Friedrich Nietzsche once said that to be free is to risk being misunderstood. But what he didn't say is that the misunderstanding never truly ends. It becomes a part of you, like a shadow that follows even in the brightest light. Have you ever felt that strange exhaustion after trying to explain something that feels obvious to you, but no one else seems to grasp? You simplify it, you break it down, you try to make it gentle, but the response is always the same blank eyes that look at you as if you've spoken in another language. That is not arrogance. That is the loneliness of clarity. Plato wrote about the allegory of the cave, where people live chained facing shadows, and when one man escapes and sees the real world, he returns to tell the others. But they laugh at him, mock him, even kill him, because reality is an unbearable thing to those who've only known illusion. And maybe that's the fate of every thinker, every seeker to live suspended between two worlds, one where everyone belongs, and one where you truly see. But the question is, what do you do with this vision? Do you curse it, hide it, bury it? Or do you learn to live with it? Because seeing too much is both a curse and a responsibility. You begin to understand that people are not shallow because they choose to be, but because depth demands pain, and most cannot bear the weight of seeing the world as it is. They need their illusions to survive. They need the comfort of simplicity, the warmth of certainty, the sedative of distraction. Nietzsche called it herd morality, the instinct to blend in, to think collectively, to surrender one's inner truth for external peace. It's not evil, it's survival. But once you awaken, you can never return to that herd. You stand outside, half belonging, half banished. You see the machinery of life working underneath, how ambition disguises insecurity, how love often masks loneliness, how virtue becomes performance, and how truth becomes dangerous. And then comes the realization that the more awake you are, the harder it becomes to connect. This is the paradox of intelligence, of sensitivity, of consciousness itself. The deeper your understanding, the greater your distance. Bonhoeffer called it the tragedy of the wise, to carry within them a truth that the world is not yet ready for. But perhaps the point is not to be understood. Perhaps the purpose of vision is not to be shared, but to be lived. Because understanding is not meant to make you superior. It's meant to make you compassionate. When you see the illusions that others live by, you also see their fragility, their silent suffering, their desperate need for meaning, and suddenly your own loneliness transforms from bitterness to empathy. The curse of seeing too much becomes a kind of quiet guardianship. You stop trying to wake everyone up, and instead you learn how to speak to their hearts in whispers, not to destroy their illusions, but to gently expand them. That is what every philosopher eventually learns. The truth is not a sword, it's a mirror. Socrates was condemned for asking questions, not because his ideas were wrong, but because he made others see themselves. And that's the most terrifying thing in the world, to see yourself without illusion. The truth is, people don't fear death. They fear exposure. They fear seeing their beliefs crumble, their masks fall, their purpose dissolve. They fear the void that follows clarity. That's why they mock the thinker. That's why they ignore the philosopher. That's why wise walk alone. But solitude is not the same as loneliness. Solitude is the forge of the mind. It's where you begin to create meaning instead of seeking it. It's where you realize that wisdom is not about answers, but about endurance. The endurance to live without illusions and still choose kindness. Because once you see the emptiness of things, you are free to fill them with your own essence. You stop expecting the world to make sense, and instead, you start to make sense of yourself. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." And that why, that inner flame, is what transforms intelligence from a curse into power. You may not find people who see like you, but you will find purpose. And that purpose will give meaning to your solitude. Maybe that's the secret no one tells you. The world will never understand you fully, but it doesn't have to. You are not here to be understood. You are here to see, to create, to illuminate. The thinkers of history all shared this fate. Isolation in life, recognition in death. Because society always rejects what challenges it before embracing it. But the reward of seeing too much is that you get to live twice. Once through the eyes of the world, and once through the depth of your own. So if you ever feel alone in your perception, if the noise of the world feels unbearable, remember this. You are not lost, you are just further along the path. And maybe the world doesn't need more people who think the same. Maybe it needs more who dare to see differently. Because every great change, every revolution of mind or spirit, began with someone who was willing to bear the loneliness of truth. The curse of seeing too much is also the gift of understanding deeply. And though it isolates you, it also liberates you. Because once you've seen, you can never be deceived again. So embrace your solitude, not as a punishment, but as a sanctuary, a space where vision becomes creation and thought becomes art. And one day, when the world finally catches up, they will call what once made you lonely wisdom. If this spoke to you, subscribe and stay, because the next chapter goes even deeper into what it means to live awake in a sleeping world. Thanks for watching.